What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 62, and this is an episode where we're going to be previewing, give you all of our thoughts and predictions ahead of tomorrow's NXT UK Takeover Cardiff show. So a lot to look forward to there. It's going to be a big show on the WWE Network, of course, and for those of you that live in the UK and are lucky enough to going to be travelling to Cardiff tomorrow, the Motorpoint Arena, to see Takeover Cardiff in the flesh, it's going to be a fantastic show, and I'm going to be there in amongst the thousands of people that are going to be watching some of the best talent across UK and Europe featured in NXT UK Takeover Cardiff. So we will be doing our predictions and running down the entire card later on in the episode, along with our guest host, who I will introduce very, very soon. But today, as normal on a Thursday or Friday, we normally cover this week's episode of NXT UK on the WWE Network and this week's episode of NXT. But before all of that, just to throw out our social media plugs so you know where to find us. If you're on Twitter and you want to reach out to us on Twitter, you can do. Our Twitter handle is @withjohners_pod. We're on Instagram. Instagram.com/wrestlingwithjohners, so go and catch up with us there. And of course, our ever popular and fun and interactive Facebook community page. Go onto Facebook and search Wrestling with Johners. And of course, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, please don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, share and shout about the Wrestling with Johners podcast. This is your only podcast for all of your weekly NXT, NXT UK, WWE, AEW and all round pro wrestling needs. So please spread the word, tell your friends and tell your family, and help us to grow this podcast. I really enjoy what we do on this podcast. This is the second podcast in 2 days. Yesterday, I dropped an episode which was our AEW All Out pay-per-view predictions episode. And I spoke passionately for nearly an hour about all the matches that will be taking place tomorrow night. Also, live on I think it's on ITV box office, so catch AEW All Out there. But before that, listen to my podcast, the AEW All Out prediction show, the preview episode 61 in the archives, as your companion piece to AEW All Out to get you ready for the big show tomorrow night. And if I haven't mentioned before, I will do again. Wrestling with Johners are now selling merchandise. We're selling t-shirts, mugs, phone cases. If you go to teespring.com/stores/Wrestling with Johners, purchase before the end of August. You've only got today and tomorrow to get 10% off your purchase. Yes, it will be delivered the first week or two of September. But if you purchase either today or tomorrow, you'll get 10% off. There will be other similar offers happening later on in the year, possibly as we get closer to Christmas. We've got a good range of Wrestling with Johners merchandise and T-shirts there. And just to give you a quick overview of our podcast schedule, of course, yesterday, the 29th of August, we dropped the AEW All Out prediction show, so please go out and listen to that. Today, Friday the 30th of August, we're doing our NXT UK recap show and also our Road to Takeover Cardiff preview prediction show, along with our guest host. On Sunday, I'll be dropping 2 episodes of the podcast. Firstly, our AEW Double or Nothing episode, where I'll have Ash Crawford and Chris Thornton joining me for the AEW pay-per-view show, All Out. And of course, Ash and Chris joined me on the Double or Nothing episode back in May, so you may be familiar with their efforts there. They'll be joining me on Sunday, and Sunday afternoon I'll be joined by David Anderson. We'll be covering NXT UK Takeover Cardiff in great detail, and of course David Anderson is going to be there. I will no doubt bump into him tomorrow afternoon ahead of the show. But another person that's going to be there watching the show, along with his crew coming down from Milton Keynes to Cardiff, will be none other than Kieron Reed. So Kieron Reed is our guest host this week that's going to be helping us to cover all the shows and our predictions for Takeover Cardiff a bit later on. So Kieron, welcome, and thank you for helping us out with the podcast again. Great to have you back on board.
Thank you. Great to be back. Can't be more excited to get this podcast under the belt. Get ready for tomorrow. Obviously, there's a few things we've got to talk about with what's happened on previous shows. Brilliant build up for what we're about to talk about, and just really, really excited to be back and really excited to talk about something I'm going to go watch live.
Excellent. So you're going to be there with your girlfriend or fiance, and Ashley Clements. We spoke to Ashley. He was on the podcast last week, and I'll be getting to meet the three of you tomorrow. So yeah, let's get excited about NXT UK Takeover Cardiff. It will be the second takeover to have taken place under the NXT UK umbrella, the first of which was early January this year, where there was an excellent show with a fantastic main event, Pete Dunne versus Joe Coffey, and we'll talk more about certainly Joe Coffey, who's in a featured match in Cardiff a little bit later on. But Kieron, you've been a busy guy. You've been to a wedding recently, and you've been kind of keeping up to date with all of your NXT and NXT UK. You've been a busy guy. Tell us a little bit about your last couple of weeks. Have you been to any wrestling shows recently, or what are your plans for wrestling shows over the next few weeks or few months?
So obviously, I've not been to any wrestling shows since I was last on. Reluctantly, but unfortunately, there was a Progress show last weekend that I fell on the same day that I had a wedding to go to. So obviously priorities come first, wedding first. But obviously, as you know, and as I've spoken about before on the podcast, I've got two big shows coming up in the middle of September with Natural Progression Series for Progress, and then obviously Progress's big show of the year, Still Chasing, at Alexander Palace the day after. Looking forward to that. Obviously got tomorrow's show as well. And it's just working, trying to fund all of my little adventures that I like to go on.
Yeah, as we were talking off air about, all these wrestling shows, they're just awesome to go to. And if you're a big wrestling fan like Kieron, he loves his Progress, loves going to all the shows, especially I think Alexander Palace and what's the other popular venue for Progress in London? It's
Electric Ballroom.
You got it. Yes, the Electric Ballroom. And you kind of go to a lot of them shows, and you do travel backwards and forwards from Milton Keynes to London quite a bit to follow Progress. But yes, it does get quite expensive, especially when you factor in travel, when you factor in possibly merchandise, food and drink for the day. But yes, you're definitely dedicated to the cause, and you're a big Progress fan. So I love talking to you about Progress. And hopefully the next time we have you on after this week's episode, of course, we'll be able to talk about possibly one or two of the Progress shows that you will have been to in between. But should we crack on and talk about NXT UK, or this week's episode of NXT UK anyway? So it kicked off with a match between Ilya Dragunov and Tyson T-Bone. So the last time we saw Dragunov, it was in a losing effort against Cassius Ohno a few weeks ago in what was a very hard-hitting match with a surprising loss for Ilya Dragunov, bearing in mind that he's only had a few matches prior to that on NXT UK. Tonight, Ilya's going up against a wrestler who's been with the NXT brand since day one, Tyson T-Bone. So you may remember that Tyson T-Bone has been a regular feature on NXT UK TV on the WWE Network, but he was also in the WWE United Kingdom Championship tournament back in January 2017, and he's kind of been with the brand ever since. No real accomplishments for Tyson T-Bone, but definitely popular with the NXT UK crowd. In this match, Dragunov is his usual very intense self as he connects with a leaping senton for the first 2 count of the match. Tyson T-Bone then gets a 2 count of his own from a wicked right hand before dropping Ilya with a running crossbody before connecting with a brutal high-angled suplex on Ilya. In doing so, firmly taking control of the match, certainly for that time. Dragunov connects with a running clothesline in the corner before delivering a stiff lariat for a 2 count of his own. After delivering a stiff right hand, Tyson T-Bone runs shoulder first into the ring post. So Dragunov kind of swiftly ducking the onslaught there from Tyson T-Bone, with T-Bone going shoulder first in the ring post, allowing Dragunov to hit a top rope senton onto his opponent, followed by his torpedo Moscow finisher for the 1-2-3 pinfall victory. So Tyson T-Bone did manage to get in a fair bit of offense during this match. However, Dragunov used all of his cunning and all of his pace and intensity to defeat his bigger opponent in another decent opener. A good way to start this week's NXT. Kieron, you've seen Ilya Dragunov live once or twice. Give us your thoughts on this match and how well you thought it went.
So I'd like to just take a second to actually give some credit to Tyson T-Bone.
Definitely.
Obviously, we've not seen him on NXT UK for a little while now. Obviously, he's been wrestling as a tag team with Saxon Huxley.
Yeah.
But to see him back as an independent wrestler and actually seeing what he can actually do, he is a brilliant wrestler. I've actually got him on Facebook as well. If you ever meet the guy, nice as pie in person. Obviously, he's playing a gimmick on TV. He does look very intimidating in person, but he's always up for a chat.
He's a very big dude, isn't he? He's a big guy.
Yeah. No, it was nice to see him actually get a good showing, and against Ilya as well.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like they're playing Ilya as kind of like the underdog sort of thing. So he takes a bit of a pasting and then comes back at the end with a few shots in the middle. Personally, not how I would book Ilya, but in the same breath, I'm not part of WWE Creative, so
it's interesting, Kieron. I was thinking exactly the same, to be honest with you. And as much as I kind of love what Ilya does in the ring, and I love his intensity, I love his entrance music and his entrance, and I just love his kind of really, balls to the wall intensity, fast paced action. But is he quite connecting with the audience yet? Maybe it's because he hasn't had that kind of feud yet with somebody to really give him, that name value or to connect with the fans. But what do you think? I mean, I personally don't think he's quite clicked with the audience just yet. And maybe he's just missing that something, or maybe he's missing that kind of clash or that big match or that star-making match, or maybe that feud with somebody on the roster that can, I don't know, bring out his personality a bit more. What's your thoughts on that?
So for me, I think it's a lot of... So I've always had this theory that British fans, they do their education, they do their studying, and they do their research before they go to a show. So they know the wrestlers they're going to see. I feel like the crowds that Ilya's been performing in front of have just kind of brought tickets for the experience of going to watch a live show. And if they actually watched any of this stuff, like his stuff versus Walter at WXW, stuff like that, you wouldn't have to have him reconnect with the NXT UK fans. They'd watch that and they'd be like, oh my God, this guy's badass. And for me, I don't know. I don't know if it's the NXT UK brand isn't bringing the right sort of fans. You'd see a complete difference tomorrow at Cardiff, because I know for a fact that pretty much all of the Progress Ultras, which are the guys that go every single month, there's a lot going to tomorrow.
Right.
So if in a dark match he comes out, the place will probably erupt, because those guys love him, and I couldn't agree more. For big feud, to give him some name, I don't know, maybe for like a mid-card sort of thing, maybe you'd chuck Pete in there for a bit, have them for like a three stages match. So obviously one gets the pin, the other one gets the pin, then it ends with how it does. With that, you don't actually need to give Ilya the 2 wins to make him win that feud, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you've got Pete. Pete's got the name value, so you know if Pete's going into a feud with someone that's not for the strap or against Walter, Pete's pretty much going to pick it up. But it seems to me like Pete's wandering off to NXT for a bit now anyway.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me if you see him about, but yeah, I don't know. Big names on the card currently. I mean, you could feud him. I would have personally feuded him with Cassius. Cassius is that big name. He's well travelled. He's got himself a legacy. Everyone knows who Cassius Ohno is / Chris Hero.
Well, Ilya's going to want his win back, isn't he? He's going to want to get his win back at some point. So I'm sure that we'll get a rematch between the two. So hopefully we do see an opportunity to see the two of them again at some point in the future. But do you think Ilya would benefit from having maybe a manager, or maybe align himself with somebody to be a mouthpiece for him? Maybe kind of part of the connection thing, or part of the personality thing is the fact that you don't hear him talk much. I think he was interrupted in the middle of a promo by Cassius Ohno a few weeks back, which then led to their match. But maybe it's kind of the verbal thing that's not quite clicking at the moment. You don't see him do much on the mic. So would he benefit from aligning himself with another, maybe a stablemate, for example, or possibly have a manager? What are your thoughts on that?
Potentially, but because of, obviously you've got Imperium there now, and I don't maybe. Well, there was something I was going to drop a bit later on about something happening which we haven't covered yet in the podcast. So maybe I'll drop what I think a little bit later on when we bring it up.
We'll save that to later. But Ilya Dragunov getting a victory there against Tyson Tebow. Then we get a video package hyping up the NXT UK Women's Championship match between current champion Toni Storm and once best friend, now bitter enemy Kaylee Ray. We saw again the excellent promo from Kaylee Ray from last week's episode where she told Toni Storm that she was the reason her family and friends and ex-boyfriend abandoned her, and she was the reason why her father walked out on her when she was just a little girl. This match is going to be a hot one. I can't wait for this one, and I can't wait to talk more about it between these two in our predictions segment a little bit later on. Then we get a video promo from Jack Gallagher asking who is the better wrestler, himself or Cassius Ohno, as the last time these two went at it on NXT UK TV. Cassius Ohno pinned Jack Gallagher, but with Jack's foot underneath the bottom rope. So their rematch will be happening on NXT UK next week. It makes me think, and this is probably something that we'll talk about a bit later, but there's obviously going to be dark matches recorded before the main show tomorrow. And I'm wondering if this will be a dark match that will take place tomorrow in Cardiff, because I've checked through all of the matches that took place in Plymouth, and this one didn't appear to be recorded in Plymouth, so I'm guessing that it's going to be recorded tomorrow before the main show. I could be wrong with that, but nonetheless, Jack Gallagher versus Cassius Ohno will be an excellent match, and we will get to cover that on next week's episode of Wrestling with Johners. Then we got our second match of the night, Oliver Carter making his debut against Joseph Connors. So this is the debut for Oliver Carter, who's had a couple of hype videos over the last week or so, and Oliver Carter strikes with a stiff forearm uppercut to start the match. However, Joseph Connors strikes back with several stiff blows of his own across Carter's chest. Connors gets a 2 count from a strong lariat before delivering a reverse snap mare, and Connors is looking good in the opening few minutes of this match. Carter then fights back with an enziguri and a pair of flying knees, then a meteora to the chest before getting a close near fall from a reverse kick to the face of his opponent. Carter then misses a lion salt, allowing Joseph Connors to drive Carter down and out with his don't look down finisher. The match did get a little sloppy at stages, in my opinion. However, Joseph Connors did pick up the win, and it was refreshing to see the NXT UK original Joseph Connors take home a victory against the debutant Oliver Carter. So what were your thoughts on this? What did you think of Oliver Carter in his debut, and a bit of a resurgence of Joseph Connors getting a victory after having quite a run of losses, to be honest with you? And he's definitely an impressive wrestler. I've never really been a big fan of Joseph Connors' character or personality, but his strength is definitely in the ring and between those ropes. So what were your thoughts on this match? And I'd be interested to know your thoughts on Joseph Connors as well, and what you think this match did for his career in NXT UK.
So, in my honest opinion, Joseph Connors, not a fan of him at all. I just don't. I'm just not connecting with the gimmick, I guess. And
yeah, he's a bit one-dimensional personality-wise, I think.
Yeah, it's just I'm a sociopath pretty much, and it's not. If you want someone to get over, that's not how you get over with the crowd. If you're going to be a bit more evil and a bit more vindictive, then it's hard to put into words, because obviously it's my personal opinion. There's probably people out there that love Joseph Connors, and if they do, please try and convince me otherwise to why I should like him. But for me, I just think, as you said, his character's one-dimensional. His in-ring style isn't very different either, so he doesn't really change how he wrestles. He just brawls and then hits his signature and then hits his finisher. It's like a British John Cena, but with less moves. And for me, I don't think he should have won that match, my honest opinion. They put so much emphasis on Johnny Saint, thinking this guy is going to be the next best thing. And like you said, the match was sloppy. I didn't really get into it as a match match, to be honest. I was kind of just like, whoever wins, is it really going to make any difference? Joseph Connor's lost so many matches now that I honestly forgot he actually wrestled for NXT UK. Because you don't see him, and there's got to be a reason to that. They wouldn't not put someone on the show because they don't have the depth at the minute.
Yeah, and they've done it so many times with Joseph Connors where you think they're going to start to get behind him. They give him the odd win, and then the next week or a couple of weeks later he loses again. So all of his momentum's been lost. Yeah, he's definitely a wrestler that needs kind of a makeover, or maybe a new gimmick, or maybe to align himself with somebody. I think you said earlier that he's been tagging quite a lot. He's been doing a few tag matches recently. I know that, but he doesn't. You said he's a sociopath. He doesn't seem to get on well with others, and I think he's told us the same in promos as well. So definitely an interesting character. An interesting individual, but it's not plain and simple with Joseph Connors. Like I say, he's okay as a wrestler. I think as a personality, quite one-dimensional. He's got a lot of work to do to make a believer out of yourself, by the sounds of it, and myself included. But then we get a clip, and it's a clip that's been doing the rounds on the internet over the last few days. We see Cesaro getting ready to jump on a plane and take a more hands-on approach at NXT UK Takeover Cardiff, or so he tells us in his own words. Cesaro will be in Cardiff, but the big question is in what capacity. There have been so many rumours going around that he might be in a special attraction match against Pete Dunne, with Pete Dunne kind of replying to Cesaro's tweet saying, "All right, mate." There have also been rumours that he might join forces with former tag team partner Cassius Ohno, and at this stage it's just pure speculation, but it's fun to guess, and we're going to talk more about Cesaro and what parts he might have to play in Takeover Cardiff tomorrow a little bit later on. Then we got our next match, and this is the main event of this week's NXT UK, and it's Kenny Williams versus Jordan Devlin. Now, in recent weeks, Jordan Devlin has been complaining that he's not on the card for Takeover Cardiff, and tonight he's in a match against the Lucky Un, Kenny Williams, but it's still not a match on the Takeover card. Williams gets the first 2 count of the match from a crafty roll-up, but Devlin then appearing to have had enough of Williams, rolls to the outside and starts to walk to the back, only for Williams to catch hold of the Irish Ace and bring him back into the ring and bringing the fight to Jordan Devlin. However, Devlin punishes Williams by driving him into the barriers at ringside before hoisting Williams up into the torture rack. Jordan appears to fire up Williams after a penalty kick to his back, following up with a wrecking ball drop kick and a second dive through the ropes onto his opponent on the outside. Williams is alert enough to block a Spanish fly from Jordan Devlin that would have been devastating on the outside. Instead, Williams gets another 2 count from a top rope flying back elbow. Devlin is able to reverse a quesadora by Williams into a brutal high-angled German suplex, and that did look pretty painful. And then in the move of the match, Devlin catches a running Williams with a Spanish fly, on the fly, you could say, in the centre of the ring for a close near fall. Then, with Devlin prone on the top turnbuckle, Williams slingshots himself back into the ring with a stunning Hurricane Rana for another close near fall. Devlin then gets a 2 count from a brilliant moonsault onto the back of Kenny Williams. The end of the match is forthcoming as Devlin delivers his awesome Devlin side CO2 suplex or high-angled backdrop driver, whatever you want to call it, for the win. So Jordan Devlin, he's been on a massive winning streak for a long time now, Kieron. I know that we're both massive fans of Jordan Devlin, and another person that we're going to be talking about a bit later on, but surprisingly not on the Takeover Cardiff card. So we've kind of, cut to the chase here and now about Jordan Devlin. Why is it that you think he's not on the Takeover Cardiff card? And have you got any ideas on a role he might play at Cardiff at all? If he does show up, is he going to interfere in any of the matches? Do you think that he's going to include himself into a match as an extra person, for example, turning a singles match into a triple threat? What's your thoughts on Jordan Devlin? What's your thoughts on this match and the role that he might play in Cardiff, if at all?
So I'd love to see him at Cardiff. But I'm going to talk about the match first, and then
Go on.
I'll do my speculations. So it was nice to see Kenny get used properly, shall we say. He's got this whole lucking thing, and his whole gimmick is to frustrate his opponents with his quickness, and that's what he did with Devlin, and they told the story really, really well. So obviously you could see in the match Devlin was getting frustrated. Everything Devlin did, he had a counter for. So the storytelling in that match was brilliant. Obviously the right person went over, as you know, massive Devlin fan, have to be. You can't not fault Devlin and his in-ring work. It's nice to see a bit more of a heel side to Devlin, which makes me think maybe, just maybe, you can see him insert himself potentially in the main event. Let's face it, Walter, Tyler, Jordan Devlin, triple threat main event at Cardiff Takeover. How amazing that is.
Yeah, it's pretty tasty, isn't it?
I can't see that happening, just because if they were going to do that, they already booked it and put some hype on it, let's say. I could see him potentially coming down and attacking the winner, making himself potentially
the next number one contender, yeah.
And more building a heel character. I think Devlin as a face is brilliant, but I think Devlin as a heel is even better. And you saw a lot more of that in this match with Kenny Williams as well. He seemed to be a little bit more darker than what he usually is. And I like that from Devlin because he does more unpredictable things and he's got the ability to do it. So, yeah, for me, talking about how I want him to get involved, make it a triple threat. And I think everyone will erupt in that place. Have him come down and interfere and attack the winner, even better, the place will erupt as well. Either what way we see Devlin pop up some point in that show, everyone's going to be happy.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna talk a little bit later on about where I think Jordan Devlin might appear, but I do think he's going to make an appearance tomorrow. I mean, you wouldn't have Jordan Devlin on pretty much every episode of NXT UK and not have him on the biggest show of the year, Takeover Cardiff. So I'll talk a little bit more about where I think Jordan Devlin might make an appearance in Cardiff tomorrow a little bit later on. But I've got to fully echo your sentiments regarding Kenny Williams. I thought he put in a hell of an effort, a hell of a show here against Jordan Devlin. He got in a lot of offense. I really like Kenny Williams' style. I like his high-flying maneuvers, a bit of a daredevil, but I like his gimmick. I like his in-ring work, and thought he put in a really good shift here against Jordan Devlin. And all in all, it was an excellent match, and possibly you could say the best match that Kenny Williams has had since being on NXT UK. We've seen him quite a bit in tag team matches with Amir Jordan, but yeah, he's not had too singles competitor on NXT UK, and I think that this was possibly his best singles match against Jordan Devlin this past week. But following this match, we then get a full recap of what brings us to the main event for Saturday at Takeover Cardiff, taking us all the way back to when Walter first won the championship against Pete Dunne at Takeover New York in early April, through to the inception of Imperium, the battle between British Strong Style and Imperium earlier on in the year, through to the surprise appearance from Alexander Wolf, bringing an end to that match. We're reminded of the brutal beatdown of Tyler Bate from Imperium and the WWE UK champion Walter as well, with Trent Seven handcuffed to the turnbuckle, crying out for his friend who was completely helpless and unable to help Tyler Bate, who was laying lifeless on the outside of the ring. Then we get a fully recovered Tyler Bate reappearing in Plymouth to sneak attack Walter, eventually managing to dispose of each member of Imperium before being able to drop Walter with his Tyler Driver 97 on last week's episode. And I can't wait for that main event, whether it's including Jordan Devlin or not. I think Tyler Bate and Walter as a standalone match is going to be amazing. And I'm sure, like me, Kieron, you saw Tyler Bates' match against Walter at Hello Wembley, the Progress show at the end of pretty much a year to the day, to be honest with you, that they had that match at Wembley. And I mean, that match then was brutal. But Tyler Bates definitely put in a hell of a fight. And it was a proper typical David versus Goliath match in Wembley, and I think that's the sort of battle we're going to get tomorrow in Cardiff at the Motorpoint Arena. And then we get the grizzled young veterans come out to close the show with microphones in hand. Then they're followed by Gallus who are soon joined by the South Wales subculture, the Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster, of course. It turns into an all-out brawl between these three teams, and this week's show goes off the air with Gallus and GYV beating the living hell out of one another as Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster look on from down below on the canvas. Not a very flattering way to end the show as far as they're concerned, but definitely the point got across that those three teams are definitely up for their match tomorrow in Cardiff. And I said all along, and I said in last week's episode with Ashley, that it definitely gives that kind of underdog babyface vibe to Morgan and Andrews, and they're going to be going into the matches as clear underdogs. But could it be their time to shine? Could it be the day for the underdog to rise and possibly have their moment in the sun tomorrow in Cardiff? And we'll talk more about that match a bit later on. But all in all, a good episode of NXT UK, Kieran. Any final thoughts on this week's NXT UK before we move on to NXT?
I just want to take a shout out to Zach Gibson. If you listen to his promo when Gallus come out, he was like, "Oh yeah, then Gallus." And then when Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews music hit, he went, "Oh great, here comes the Irish wet wipes."
Yeah, line of the night. Yeah, brilliant.
It just made me giggle as soon as he said it. I was just like, "Yeah."
It was good. It was good.
That's what Gibson does. He's brilliant on the mic. I can't wait to see him at Still Chasing as well.
Yeah, definitely. Then on to this week's NXT then. Well, this week's episode promised to be an excellent episode from the off, and it was advertised last week that we'll be seeing Keith Lee in his long-awaited and much-anticipated rematch from well over 6 months ago now against Dominic Dijakovic, as well as the Street Profits versus the Undisputed Era for the NXT Tag Team Championship. So those two matches we'll be covering very, very soon in our rundown of NXT. Yeah, it promises to be an excellent episode of NXT. What were your thoughts going into it? Obviously, you've seen all the hype you possibly saw last week's episode. Two big matches, Keith Lee versus Dijakovic, and the Street Profits putting their title on the line versus the Undisputed Era. Were you kind of excited before this episode of NXT? What were your thoughts going into it?
I was excited for Keith Lee Dijakovic.
Yeah.
Because, let's face it, we've waited 6 months for this match, 6 months plus for this match.
Definitely.
And you knew it was going to be a barn burner. I wasn't actually looking forward to the Street Profits Undisputed Era match because it was ruined for me.
So somebody spoiled it, did they?
Yeah, the internet spoiled it for me.
Yes.
But yeah, I won't get too deep into that because then we'll give some stuff away before.
Absolutely, yeah. But our first match of the night on this week's NXT was Cammy Fields versus the new Io Shirai. So Shirai doesn't wait. She doesn't need to be asked twice. Coming straight out of the blocks with a stunning drop kick onto her opponent as soon as the bell rings. Cammy Fields does attempt to fight back, however, but Shirai connects with a palm strike, then a pair of running knees in the corner before climbing the turnbuckles to deliver her patented moonsault. But as the referee goes to count to 3, Io breaks her own pinning attempt by pulling her opponent off the canvas by the hair. Instead, Io shows us a move that we haven't really seen much of from her of late. Her Karajuku clutch, causing her opponent to tap out for all she is worth, giving the submission win to the new Io Shirai. However, the new Io Shirai doesn't want to leave without putting an exclamation point on her victory as she collects a kendo stick from underneath the ring and to add further punishment to her fallen opponent. However, before Io could put the kendo stick to good use, she's chased down by a vengeful Candice LeRae, who pulls the kendo stick away from Io and gets a couple of good shots in of her own, causing Io to scurry back up the ramp, looking less than pleased at what just happened between her and Candice LeRae. So, Kieran, I'm really enjoying everything about the new Io Shirai. Love her new darker heel personality. just like Bray Wyatt's new character, The Fiend, I think that this is possibly the second best thing to get excited about as far as characters are concerned on WWE TV programming at the moment. And it looks as though Candice LeRae isn't quite finished with her former best friend, especially after their epic match at Takeover Toronto a few weeks ago. What were your thoughts on kind of this opening segment to tonight's show?
So it was a given that EO was going over. It didn't matter who popped up. And we kind of guessed that the feud was going to carry on because of how the match ended at Takeover. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about it. If they start doing matches with some sort of stipulation between these two, they can drag this feud on half a year. They could do Johnny Gargano Ciampa sort of stuff, and everyone would still watch it because those two together in the ring is entertainment. Yeah. And I look forward to when they wrestle again. And I will probably stay up and watch it live because, unfortunately, I didn't get to do that with Takeover Toronto.
A missed opportunity. But their match at Takeover was, in my opinion, possibly the best match of the night, even though you had that classic 2 out of 3 falls gimmick match between Gargano and Cole to cap off Takeover Toronto. I think that not necessarily the surprise of the night, but a lot of people's opinion for the match of the night was Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae. So they've got something good there, definitely.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to see if they actually utilise it. The bit I'm slightly concerned about with this is because obviously they're going slightly darker with those two. And obviously NXT is now going to 2 hours on USA. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to... But again, these are all pre-taped, so you can't really put into action what they're going to do now that they're officially going to Fox because it was done beforehand. So it's going to be interesting to see over the next few weeks where they go with it. Because obviously now they've got to start planning for that sort of stuff and feuds they're going to have around that sort of time and era. Because you know for a fact they're going to want their first show on the live one to be massive. So it wouldn't surprise me if you saw some sort of stipulation match for the opening show. For that.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see.
Definitely. And speaking of that, I think we're only, I think we're only 2 or 3 weeks away from the first live 2-hour show of NXT on USA. So whatever they filmed, whatever's in the can is pretty much all that's going to be pre-taped going forward because from a couple of 3 weeks time, it's going to be live and 2 hours of it every single week. But after this match, we then get a video package about Kushida showing us clips of all his victories to date. But I'm still waiting for Kushida to have that 1-star making match, that 1-star making performance, as he's not been involved in any memorable feuds, which is something he desperately needs before the shine well and truly fades from Kushida's star. I'm still a big fan of his. I think he's an excellent in-ring performer, possibly similar to Ilya Dragunov in a way that maybe his lack of promo skills he's possibly doing him more harm than good. I don't know, or possibly that lack of star-making feud is not doing him any favours in a very similar situation to Ilya Dragunov that we spoke about earlier. But then we get the match that everybody's talking about. Certainly match of the week, match of the month. A lot of people are calling it the match of the year. But Keith Lee versus Dominic Dijakovic, it was the much anticipated rematch from their match over 6 months ago between these two very athletic heavyweights. And they had that very memorable TV match on an episode of NXT that went to a double count out on that occasion. From then, everybody was keenly looking forward to their rematch, which was originally rumoured to take place around WrestleMania weekend and could possibly have been on the Takeover New York card back in April, but was obviously canned due to Dijakovic's injury. He's been kept on the shelf due to injury until now. So just to go through some of the key spots in this very, very highlight-packed and eventful match, there's strong Keith Lee chants before the bell even sounds from the Full Sail fans. Keith Lee demonstrates his power and agility with a leapfrog, a shoulder barge tackle, and a double hand slap, with Dijakovic then getting his own back with a big boot to the face of Keith Lee. Keith Lee then slingshots himself into the ring with a high cross body before getting a 2 count with a gigantic lariat, turning Dijakovic inside out. Then, in a shocking move, Keith Lee delivers a pop-up powerbomb onto his opponent onto the side of the ring, with Dijakovic landing hard on the ring apron and onto the floor on the outside. Then Dijakovic delivers a super kick, sending Lee to the outside himself before executing an excellent somersault plancher over the top rope, demonstrating his agility that shouldn't be normal for a man of his size and stature. Then Keith Lee catches Dijakovic in midair into like a powerbomb stance, only for Dijakovic to backflip off of Keith Lee's shoulders, almost landed on his feet. Once again, another sight to be seen from such a big man. Dijakovic then drops Lee with a suplex, then a stunning moonsault of his own, with Lee managing to kick out after 2. Then both men standing precariously on the top turnbuckle. Keith Lee somehow manages to hit an avalanche Spanish fly for another close near fall, and the fans at Full Sail completely lose their shit at this point. And they're all watching they know they're watching something special, and the audience at home know that this is definitely a match of the year contender. Everybody's on their feet chanting NXT, NXT, NXT. Keith Lee gets stopped from delivering something else from the top rope before Dijakovic catches the 340-pound man on his back, on his shoulders, to deliver his Feast Your Eyes finisher to get the hard-fought win, the 1-2-3 in this outstanding match. So I might go far as to say that this is possibly my match of the year, certainly up there. But Kieron, this was an incredible match, and I don't mind having to wait 6 months plus for a rematch if this is what we're going to get between these two fantastic wrestlers. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one.
Right, so I actually watched both shows yesterday. So obviously, because we're going to Still Chasing, my girlfriend hasn't seen much of Keith Lee's stuff, so I made her sit there and watch this match with me, and I think both of us the whole way through were like, ow, ouchie, that looks painful.
Yeah.
But in the same breath as well, we were both like, wow, how are these guys doing this? Obviously, I know what Keith Lee's capable of, and if anyone watched the World Collides tournament over WrestleMania weekend, and if you saw Dijakovic's match with Luke Harper, you'd know what Dijakovic's about. If you haven't watched, watch it. Brilliant. Luke Harper, Dijakovic at Worlds Collide over WrestleMania weekend. Absolutely brilliant match. I'm just going to say this. This is probably two of the best talents that they've got on the NXT roster currently, but they're not utilising. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
6 months ago, when this feud was going on, you'd probably in your head have gone, whoever wins this is going to be number one contender for the title. I don't think that's gone through any of their minds yet. I've got a feeling we're going to see another Dijakovic Keith Lee match with some sort of stipulation. I'd love to see him last man standing, Iron Man, 30-minute Iron Man match. Those two going out for 30 minutes would be amazing. And I don't care when it is, what time it is, I'd watch it. Would not care. I think
it has to be the next match has to be a takeover match, surely.
It has to be a takeover match. It has to have some sort of stipulation and some sort of reward to it as well, to keep us all kind of interested. Yeah. I say we're going to be interested because those two just make fire in the ring. Both their matches have been outstanding. So for me, I'd say maybe 30-minute Iron Man match. Make it for number one contendership.
That would work. That would definitely work. Yeah, but
because both then got something to fight for, and you'd see even more come out of them. If you didn't think you could see more come out of them, trust me, there's more there.
But you saw the fans lose their shit in Full Sail. I know that my eyes were out on stalks when I was watching this match this afternoon, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, I think the fans want more, and I think as long as they want more, then these two can continue wrestling these sort of matches week in, week out, as far as I'm concerned. But their next match, it has to be a big match. It has to be a featured match on a takeover. I think that's the only grandstand setting that is big enough for these two wrestlers, quite literally, to be honest with you. Certainly with their size and stature and agility. And I think Keith Lee, I've said it all along, he's been with the WWE for been with the NXT brand for well over a year, but they've not done an awful lot with him. This feud between him and Dijakovic has worked, and this has been kind of the one feud that has really made Keith Lee interesting. But he's got so much charisma and personality and presence. So I think that, they need to look at Keith Lee as potentially a big star for the future. He needs to be on everybody's lips in about 6 months, maybe a year's time as an NXT champion, or possibly in contention, because he is the total package if you look at what he can do in the ring and what he can do on the mic. This match definitely up there with one of the best matches of the year.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I'd tell anyone who hasn't watched it yet, watch it.
Yeah, definitely. And for those, wrestling fans that have got a downer on WWE and anything WWE related, NXT is kind of like the indie promotion of WWE, you could say. And you've got some amazing talents that have been signed to NXT over the last few years or few months or few weeks. They keep picking up excellent talent from around the world. And Keith Lee is definitely one of those, along with Dijakovic. But after the match, we then get a career retrospective on Johnny Gargano, documenting his rise in NXT, his days as tag team champions with Tommaso Ciampa, his 2-year-long feud with Tommaso Ciampa as well, and his quest to become NXT champion. Johnny Gargano has to be considered. He has to be considered possibly the greatest NXT wrestler ever, especially when you consider how many 5-star matches he's had, how many takeover main events he's had, and in my opinion, he's not only Johnny Takeover, he's Johnny NXT. But he's not everybody's cup of tea, I have to admit. He's not everybody's cup of tea. And to be honest with you, I probably enjoy watching Adam Cole more than I do Johnny Gargano at the moment. But you've got to admit that when Johnny Gargano is in the ring, regardless of who his opponent is, he always pulls off an excellent match. And he would bleed and die for that company. He is definitely NXT through and through. And I think he's going to be one of the big faces that they're going to push and promote when NXT goes live for 2 hours on the USA Network in a few weeks' time. So definitely a nice video package here. Hopefully it's not been designed because Johnny Gargano is going to be moving on to the main roster or somewhere. But yes, hopefully we've got Johnny Gargano on the NXT brand for a long time to come. And then we get a recap of the ongoing feud between Mia Yim and Shayna Baszler, with Mia Yim asking William Regal for another opportunity at Shayna and the NXT Women's Championship, with Regal telling Yim that she's had her opportunity at TakeOver, and it ended up with her getting attacked last week by Shayna and the rest of the Horsewomen. We're then greeted by a special appearance from Shayna, Marina and Jessamine, the 4 horsewomen, the MMA horsewomen, with an in-ring promo segment. But before any words could be said, we get an appearance from former NXT UK Women's Champion Rhea Ripley, to a huge ovation from the Full Sail crowd. Rhea then snatches the microphone from Shayna's hand before Shayna even has a chance to utter a word. Rhea says that she knows what Shayna's going to say, that she's beaten everybody in NXT. Then, in what has to be the line of the night and a real mic drop moment, Rhea says, tell Shayna that she hasn't beaten her yet, bitch. The Horsewomen exit the ring and the fans go crazy for Rhea Ripley as she lays down the challenge for Shayna Baszler and her NXT Women's Championship. So, Kieron, we're very familiar with Rhea Ripley, obviously through her being former and the first ever NXT UK Women's Champion. Here she kind of makes her NXT debut face-to-face, a little bit of a challenge to Shayna Baszler and the line of the night. What are your thoughts on this, and seeing Rhea Ripley possibly staking a claim to being a number one contender for the championship somewhere down the line?
So I've recently been thinking about names to run through who she could face, Shayna Baszler, that being. Rhea Ripley's name didn't pop into my head, but now I've watched it and I've actually seen those two kind of interact together and seen them next to each other, would make sense.
Definitely.
They're the same sort of stature, same sort of build. They've got different sorts of training, but I've got a feeling that they'd put more emphasis on Rhea Ripley's power in a feud between those two. So Shayna goes for the Kira Buta clutch and Rhea Ripley just stands up with her on her back, stuff like that. So I'm intrigued to see where they go with it. I don't think it's time for Rhea to beat Shayna for the belt, but in the same breath, I think it's time for Rhea to go up to Shayna to go up to the main roster. There's so many potential, there's so much potential for Shayna on the main roster. I mean, Shayna versus Becky would be amazing. Shayna versus Charlotte would be amazing. It's a case of, at the minute, I don't know what they're going to do until they go to USA. We need to watch the first couple of weeks of USA to see what they're going to do with main roster pushes and stuff like that, because I feel like they're going to hold back now because they want to go toe to toe with AEW.
Yeah.
And for me, it's going to stop development of certain people's careers. I think Johnny should go to the main roster because I think he'll thrive there. Hell, do what he was doing just before WrestleMania, before Ciampa got injured. Have him doing 3 shows a week. He did it. He didn't complain about it. He loved it.
Yeah.
So there's still that potential. You could have him on, because SmackDown's going on Friday anyway. So he's got 2 rest days either side as well.
Yeah, you make some good points there, definitely. But a really nice, refreshing change to see somebody different to challenge Shayna Baszler, as in Rhea Ripley, for the Women's Championship on NXT. So it'll be interesting to see where that leads. But I definitely agree. I think that Shayna Baszler needs to go up to the main roster. There's a lot of fresh and exciting opposition that she could face on the main roster. And one match that I wouldn't mind seeing down the line, possibly a little way down the line, might be Shayna Baszler versus Ronda Rousey. That would be a match that I would definitely pay to watch. But then we get an exclusive video package featuring the Bruiserweight, Pete Dunne. Dunne says that he has everybody on notice, and if he wants something, he's going to take it. Dunne says that if anyone wants to step to him, he'll break your fingers and then he'll break your spirit. Then next week on NXT, we'll be getting the Velveteen Dream versus Kona Reeves, as well as the winner of the Breakout Tournament, Jordan Miles, going up against NXT champion Adam Cole, baby, with Adam Cole's title being on the line after Miles laid down a challenge to Cole a couple of weeks ago. So a couple of good matches to look forward to there, especially Cole versus Miles. I think that's going to be absolutely fantastic. But Kieran, let's have a look and let's talk about this week's main event of NXT. The Street Profits, current NXT Tag Team Champions, putting their titles on the line against the Undisputed Era. So this match was a rematch following their victorious outing for the Street Profits at Takeover Toronto, where video evidence proved that the illegal member of the Undisputed Era was indeed pinned at the end of that excellent match, bringing this to today, which will present to the Undisputed Era a chance to be 3 times NXT Tag Team Champions, with a really big match feel and with a big match introductions. The match kicked off with both members of the Profits performing double flapjacks on Kyle O'Reilly. Montez Ford then delivers a slingshot crossbody back inside the ring onto Bobby Fish. Fish and O'Reilly slow the match down with classic tag team action, classic tag team wrestling, keeping Montez Ford caught in the Undisputed Era's corner. Ford does manage to get the tag to Angelo Dawkins, and like a ball of fire, Dawkins connects with an exploded suplex, a couple of corkscrew splashes, and a huge spear for a 2 count. Dawkins then drops Fish with an overhead, kind of like a German suplex throw, but is brought down to earth with a chasing the dragon for a 2 count from Kyle O'Reilly. Dawkins is suffering with a leg injury at this point. However, the match spills into a bit of a melee, bit of a fight between all 4 competitors in the centre of the ring. O'Reilly applies a triangle on Dawkins, but the more powerful Dawkins manages to power up and lift O'Reilly into like a buckle bomb before delivering a frog splash. But before the referee could make the count, Bobby Fish grabs hold of Kyle O'Reilly and drags him to safety on the outside. That was only until Montez Ford drops both of his opponents with a tope con hero on the outside. However, soon after and back inside the ring, Montez Ford misses his patented frog splash, with Fish and O'Reilly delivering their high-low finisher, hook in the leg, getting the 3 count. And there we have it. The Undisputed Era now 3 times tag team champions in NXT with Adam Cole, the current NXT champion. They're only 1 step away, Kieran, from fulfilling their prophecy of having all the gold in NXT. And that was a great match to cap off this week's episode of NXT. We have new tag team champions, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish. I think this is only the second time that Bobby Fish has been tag team champions with the Undisputed Era, and the third time for Kyle O'Reilly. So give us your thoughts on this match and the fact that we have new champions.
So, interesting tidbit that was actually given to me by Ashley Clement. Undisputed Era have only ever won the titles at Full Sail.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what he messaged me telling me earlier. I wasn't 100% sure.
No, that makes sense, because I think just thinking back to Takeover New Orleans last year, I think they were they already tag team champions going into it, and Adam Cole had to defend the belt, or Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole had to. So they were already champion. Yep. So you're quite right. I think you're possibly right on that one. Yeah.
So yeah. Thanks, Ashley, for that. You've made me look a bit smarter. But I felt the match was lacking something, personally. Do
you think it was because we had that awesome match earlier on in the night between Keith Lee and Dijakovic? Do you think that had we not have had that match on the same episode, that the main event would have seemed a little bit better?
Yeah, probably. But for me as well, I think the internet ruined it for me, because I already knew the outcome of the match as well.
Yeah,
so,
spoilers, yeah.
So, yeah, for me, I just couldn't really get into it. Don't get me wrong, like, if you want to watch like classic wrestling and stuff, it's a match worth it. The thing is no matter whoever goes against the Undisputed Era, because of the legacy of just Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish as a tag team just outside of WWE, not even including WWE, you'd always put them as a strong favourite in any match. Like they said before they came out, they've held titles everywhere they've been. So, I don't know, I've kind of, every time I see UE go up against someone for the tag titles, I'd always put UE over, because it's UE. You don't really vote against Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. And we've spoke about Kyle O'Reilly in depth after Super Strong Style, actually, about how we thought he's missing a singles push because he could do it. He's got everything. And yes, they're one step closer to all the gold, but I can't see Roderick Strong holding that North American title. I just can't see it. But like it's UE, he'll get it through some sort of interference. But yeah, it's a tough one, because then if they get all the gold, who are they going to put up to take it away from them? That's my issue. Unless they do something with obviously this Jordan Miles Adam Cole match, and then they build it up to something where it's a tough one to predetermine, because obviously if you had Jordan Miles win, you'd probably put 3 of the breakout tournament guys in there. What better way to have 3 new guys go up against 3 established guys and make a name for themselves, even if they come out on the losing end?
Yeah, I'm going to predict that Roddy Strong gets a shot at the Dreams North American Championship on one of the first 2-hour live shows on the USA Network. And I think that, as a big kind of main event to counteract whatever's going on the other side on TNT with AEW, I think that we could be seeing a title change with Roddy possibly taking the North American Championship. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't ever want to see the Velveteen Dream lose his North American Championship unless it's guaranteed that he's going to be the next NXT champion. But I think, when you compare the Velveteen Dream as a character to Roderick Strong as a character, it's like chalk and cheese, to be honest with you. But I think it will happen. I think they're going to save it for one of the live episodes, one of the live 2 hours on the USA Network, so that they do have that kind of photo opportunity, that moment, that, history making moment of having all the gold. As they said at the beginning of the year, the prophecy was for each of member of the Undisputed Era, the stable, to have all the gold before the end of 2019. I think it will happen, just from a storyline standpoint. I think they need to follow through on that. But yeah, completely agree with all your sentiments there. But a lot of people are saying that this was one of the best episodes of NXT for a long time, and I have to agree. I think when you look at how it started with The exchange we had between Candice LeRae and Io Shirai after Io Shirai's win, the outstanding match between Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic. We had Rhea Ripley in her face-off with Shayna Baszler and calling her a bitch, and their new tag team champions with the Undisputed Era being 3-time tag team champions. A really, really good episode of NXT. Makes me want to see more. Makes me want to see it for 2 hours, and that will be my wish very, very soon. But I tell you what, let's move tact slightly, Kieron, and let's talk about NXT UK Takeover Cardiff, and let's talk about all the matches that will be taking place tomorrow night. Pretty much 24 hours from now, me and you will be there in the Motorpoint Arena, along with a few other thousands NXT UK fans. And these are the 5 matches that they have penciled in so far. So you've obviously got Travis Banks versus Noam Dar, Dave Mastiff versus Joe Coffey. You've got a 3-way triple threat for the tag team titles. Zach Gibson and James Drake versus Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster versus Mark Coffey and Wolfgang, otherwise known as the Grizzled Young Veterans, the South Wales Subculture and Gallus. And then you've got Tony Storm defended an NXT UK Women's Championship against Kaylee Ray, and then Walter, of course, the current WWE UK champion, against the first ever UK champion Tyler Bates. So let's pick through the bones here. Travis Banks versus Noam Dar. So I think out of all of them, this is probably the match that I'm least excited about. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a hell of a match. But Travis Banks has never really been, Mr. Personality as far as I'm concerned. I like his in-ring stuff. Noam Dar, I like him for a heel, and I think he is connecting with the audience whenever he does wrestle or pick up a microphone. But what's your thoughts on Travis Banks versus Noam Dar? Potentially it could kick off the show tomorrow.
It will kick off the show tomorrow. It's got to. I think it's the match that's had pretty much the least anticipated build up to it. I mean, they could have done more this week on NXT UK to build it up, like have one of them come down to cut a promo, have the other attack, put a bit more fuel on the fire, let's say. But at the minute, it's literally just come down to Travis Banks had a match, Noam Dar was on commentary, called Travis Banks a good boy, now they're having a match. It's not like especially enticing booking, shall we say? I'm interested to see how the match goes, because their styles are slightly similar but kind of different at the same time. They both utilise strikes. I've seen Travis utilise submissions. Obviously, Noam Dar's got his heel hook. I don't know. It could possibly, if they get enough time and they're creative enough, it could be match of the night. But for me, like you said, it's the match I'm least interested in for storyline wise, because there's nothing that really comes out of it. For me, anyway, there's nothing that really comes out of it.
Shall I throw a little bit of a spanner in the works? I think that this is where Jordan Devlin comes into it. And I think I said possibly in last week's episode that this is where I think Jordan Devlin will insert himself into the match or get inserted into the match. He's obviously got a history on NXT UK with Travis Banks, obviously putting Travis out of action before the match in Blackpool in January, which then led to Finn Balor taking on Jordan Devlin for that show. He's not got so much of a storied history with Noam Dar on NXT UK, but I know that Jordan Devlin has history with Noam Dar outside of NXT UK, certainly on the independents, and I'm pretty sure they faced each other on one of the early Progress chapters. So I think that there's a possibility where this could potentially be a 3-way. Certainly that's my thoughts anyway. If it were to go to a 3-way match, I've got to pick Jordan Devlin. If it was to stay a straight one-on-one singles match, I think I'm going to go with Travis Banks, with the fan favourite on this occasion. But what's your thoughts?
If it goes the 3-way like you predicting, then yeah, Devlin. I'm going to mix it up a bit. I think Dar's on a bit of a push. He's developing his character. He's pretty much said what his contract entices. So I think Dar would probably go over if it stayed one-on-one.
Yeah, good shout, good shout. Then we got the last man standing match between Dave Mastiff and Joe Coffey. So, of course, last time round in Blackpool, Joe Coffey was in the main event facing Pete Dunne for the WWE UK Championship, and that was a hell of a match. I don't care what anybody says, I absolutely loved that match. Dave Mastiff was also on that show. He was in a similar kind of last man standing match with Eddie Dennis in Blackpool, but this time it's going to be two big balls. Joe Coffey, Dave Mastiff, two guys that aren't afraid to kind of butt heads, so to speak, and they probably will do a fair bit of headbutting in this match. Dave Mastiff, we haven't seen so much of him since Blackpool, to be honest with you, on NXT UK TV, but he does pop up here and there. Joe Coffey, of course, is a mainstay within the Gallus stable. So I am looking forward to this match. I'm interested to see kind of where it goes, literally, whether it goes out of the ring, around the ring, or in the crowd, whether they use any gimmicks or any weapons. But I'm looking forward to, more than anything, the kind of hard-hitting kind of style from these two, the no-nonsense, and it will be pretty hardcore. I think the last time we saw these two go at it, they did beat the living hell out of one another, and it led to a double count out. So for this one, I'm going to go with Joe Coffey. I think out of the two, he's the one with the brightest future. But what say you, Kieron? What do you think about this match? Joe Coffey, Dave Mastiff, last man standing.
Don't get me wrong, I love the Bomber, Dave. He did a show with a promotion local to me when I was training with him at the time. Lovely man, to be fair. Absolutely lovely. Not a bad word to say about him. But I think the way he's been booked on NXT UK is not fantastic. So you've got this like legit big tough guy that would take pretty much anything to be beaten. And he would be perfect to go up against Walter, because he would be the perfect person to counter Walter's strength and his manipulativeness with his own. But again, in the same breath, Joe Coffey could do the same thing. I think a Joe Coffey Walter match would be insane for the title. So yeah, I'm going to go Coffey on this one, just for storyline benefits. Obviously, if Walter kills Tyler, they need another faction to go against Imperium, and who better than Gallus?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. I think it's going to be, like I say, two big bulls going at it head to head. Then our next match, the triple threat tag team match for the NXT UK Tag Team Championships. Current champion, the grizzled young veterans, Zach Gibson and James Drake, versus Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster versus Gallus. So Flash Morgan Webster, Mark Andrews got inserted into the match fairly late on after kind of being successful in their qualified matches, you could say, the chance to prove themselves and to earn a shot for their team and to be worthy of being part of this tag team championship match in Cardiff. I think no matter what anybody says, we're all big fans of Zach Gibson and his promo skills. As much as we say we hate him, we love him really. And James Drake, Mr. Mayhem. Wolfgang and Mark Coffey. I like Wolfgang. Mark Coffey, good team. But what's your kind of thoughts on these three teams and where you think it might end up in Cardiff tomorrow night?
See, a part of me is going, they'll go with Webster and Andrews because it's Wales, blah blah blah, boring. Let's give the crowd their home team the win. I don't like it when they do predictable booking like that. I hate it. I'd love for them to give us a swerve, and I'm going to go with GYV on this one. I love those two as a tag team. I love their mic work, and I want to see them actually legit finish up something with Mustache Mountain, because their last match was interfered with.
Yes.
So I would like to actually see Mustache Mountain potentially take the titles off GYV and no one else, to be honest.
Good shout. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think out of the three, I'm definitely the bigger fan of GYV compared to the other two teams. I've got two kind of trains of thought with this match, and the first one is that I think that they probably will go with Mark Andrews, Flash Morgan Webster for the hometown babyface popped. That's kind of like a Rocky moment where the underdog fights from underneath and overcomes the odds and gets that big kind of babyface victory at the end. I think that's probably the most likely ending, in my opinion. I've also heard that there's a possibility of them adding a fourth team into the match. Could that team be Imperium, Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel? Could it be somebody else on the roster, another team? But if it stays with say that again.
Pete Dunne and Trent Seven.
Well, yeah, you never know. They're two big names that aren't on the card at the moment. But I think it's going to stay a triple threat. So I don't think they're going to be adding another team. If they did, I'd love it to be Imperium. And I'd love Zach Gibson and James Drake to remain champions. But I think they're going to go with the hometown babyface pop. And I think that Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews are going to take the gold purely for storyline purposes. They've overcome the odds and, defeated all the baddies. Let's talk about Toni Storm versus Kaylee Ray. So this is another match that's had an excellent build. I don't care what anybody says. This had an excellent build. I think Toni Storm has definitely pulled her weight from the promo side of things and how the build has gone. I think the star of the build to this match has definitely been Kaylee Ray. I think that her mic work is possibly the best from the women's side of things on NXT UK. That cutting promo that she cut on Toni Storm last week is possibly one of the best promos I've heard all year, to be honest with you. I think that this one is definitely a proper rivalry, and you can see the hatred that Kaylee Ray has for Toni Storm. And I think Kaylee Ray has to be marked down as the favourite for this one, to be honest with you. If you put it all together, Toni Storm, on the other hand, she is a fighting champion, and she is a tough cookie. She will definitely give as good as she gets tomorrow night. But I don't know. I'd like to see a new champion, a new women's champion at the end of this match. I don't know whether we'll get it. We could potentially see a Toni Storm win, and then that will build to a rematch later on down the line. But I think if Kaylee Ray is going to be your women's champion, this is as good a night as any to change the title, to change hands tomorrow night in Cardiff. But that's my prediction. What about yourself, Kieran? Kaylee Ray versus Toni Storm.
They need a new champ. They need to free up Toni Storm to go to do other stuff. I think maybe potentially go up to the NXT roster, especially with going live on USA. I think that's probably a better way to go for him. So give it to KLR. But like you said, it's kind of unpredictable with what they want to do. The problem I have with this is I feel like Kaylee Ray has done most of the build work, and Toni, in her promo replies, has been quite short and blunt with her replies. So I think, as you said, I think this has been majority made by Kaylee Ray. But in the same breath, we have seen a bit more personality and a bit more depth to Toni Storm.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think it'll have to be Kaylee Ray to free up Toni Storm to go up to NXT, especially with them going to USA. They need to give Shayna people to fight until they make, I'm going to call her Nightmare EO fighter for the title. That's how it all started. This is how the whole turn started, was with Shayna. So it'd be brilliant for it to finish with EO taking the strap from her. But we're looking like months and months in the future. You know what WWE are like. They can turn their ideas on and off in days. It was something I was going to say when we were talking about the Kenny Williams match. So they've done all this build-up with Kenny Williams, but as soon as Amir Jordan comes back, they're just going to chuck him in a tag team with him again. And it's going to just kill all his momentum again. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So yeah, for me, KLR. Just to free up Toni Storm to go do some other stuff.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. To be honest with you, I wouldn't mind if Toni Storm retained. I wouldn't be disappointed if she retained, because I think, going back to one of your points, and I think it's an excellent point, she has shown a bit more personality and a bit more charisma, in the build up to this match. And I think she's reacted well to anything that Kaylee Ray has thrown at her. She's appeared upset when she's meant to be upset, and she's appeared, kind of happy when she needs to be happy. So I think her character and personality has developed a little bit in this feud alone. So like I said, I wouldn't be disappointed if it's Toni Storm or Kaylee Ray. I'm just looking forward to an excellent match, and I know that's exactly what we're going to get between these two. Then on to the main event. Walter, the current WWE United Kingdom champion, beat, of course, Pete Dunne in New York over WrestleMania weekends to be the new champion after Pete Dunne's, 682 days as champion. And he's going up against Tyler Bates, the first ever WWE UK champion. And of course, Tyler Bates won the championship back in January 2017. So, yes, nearly a year and a half, 2 years ago since Tyler first picked up the championship. But he's here. It's a proper David and Goliath story. Like I said, their match for Progress at Hello Wembley last summer, it was an epic 30-minute encounter between those two. I don't see this one being any different, to be honest with you. I think Walter is obviously going to dominate with his size and his strength. But Tyler Bates is going to come back as the underdog, showing his power and showing his fire. And I think that it's going to be a very interesting match. Is Tyler going to have enough fire, and is he going to have enough stamina and enough power to overcome Walter? I think he's going to get closer. I think he's going to hit the Tyler Driver 97 again. It wouldn't surprise me if Imperium come out to try to interfere. It wouldn't surprise me if Trent Seven's there to try to fight them off, and possibly Pete Dunne could be there to fight them off as well. But I've got to go for a Walter retain here. I think he's going to win because I don't think Tyler Bates is going to be the man to take the title away from Walter. I think, Walter's going to hang on to the title for a little while to come. But I don't think it's going to be Tyler Bates' turn. Definitely a worthy and credible contender tomorrow night against Walter. To be honest with you, I can't think of anybody better to go up against Walter under the circumstances. But I've got to pick the ring general on this occasion to retain. What about yourself, Kieron?
I'm going Walter.
Yeah.
It's got to be Walter, like you said, storyline purposes and stuff like that. They've got so many angles they can go with this as well. So obviously with the outcome of potentially two of the matches previous to this. So like you said, if they put Imperium in that Fatal 4-Way to make the triple threat a Fatal 4-Way, have Imperium win those titles, have Coffee, then beat Mastiff, then have obviously Walter retain. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. You could, like I said before, who better to go up against Imperium than Gallus? I mean, you've got two Scottish guys you can add to it. You've got Kenny Williams, Noam Dar. There's potential for bringing other talent that's Scottish into it. I mean, they've got the depth to build a quite lengthy Gallus versus Imperium storyline. And just with the size of some of the people in Gallus, it could work. But again, it's WWE. It's fantasy booking I'm coming out with. Yeah.
I love it when you do your fantasy booking, Kieron. You know that. It's the highlight.
But again, where I'm coming from is from a fan's standpoint.
Yeah.
You can't turn around and say you wouldn't love to see Imperium versus Gallus, because for a fact that would be insane. And you've got War Games coming up soon, actually.
In October. Yeah.
Shove some NXT guys in War Game. Imperium versus Gallus in War Game.
That would be good.
Just saying.
That would be good. So you're going with Walter. I'm going with Walter. So I think we both agree on that one. Now, a couple of the matches that could be on the undercard, they did mention on this week's NXT that NXT UK that next week we'll see Rhea Ripley versus Piper Niven and Cassius Ohno versus Jack Gallagher. Now, I've checked through all the matches that took place in the NXT UK Plymouth tapings, and I couldn't see these two matches on those two evenings, those two lots of tapings. So I'm assuming that these are going to be matches that will be taped on the pre-show, on the undercard to the main show tomorrow night. Rhea Ripley versus Piper Niven. They've obviously had a bit of a lengthy feud that's been going quite a few months now. And Cassius Ohno versus Jack Gallagher, we touched upon that earlier, where Gallagher got defeated on NXT UK TV with his foot underneath the ropes. So those would be two good matches to kind of kick us off if they are on the pre-show. But let me throw out a few names out there, Kieron. You kind of tell me where you think they might appear tomorrow night, if at all. So first of all, let's see. I've already said where I think Jordan Devlin might appear. But what's your thoughts on Jordan Devlin, and where do you think he might turn up tomorrow?
I want him to turn up in the main event, and I stated it when we were talking about it earlier. I think put Jordan in there, make a triple threat, would be amazing. It would just add another bit of twist to the main event.
Okay.
That's just again fantasy booking.
Yeah.
But again, there's no real hype to it, and it would take the storm out of the obviously Imperium versus British Strong style stuff.
Yeah.
But
and I said earlier that he might be it might turn the singles match between Banks and Noam Dar into a triple threat. So what about if I were to throw out the name Cesaro? Now we know that he's going to be in Cardiff. Cesaro, he told us all via a WWE.com exclusive comments the other day when he was just going to the airport to come to the UK. But Cesaro, where do you think he's going to make an appearance tomorrow?
Pete Dunne.
Right. Okay.
And it would be perfect as well for Pete then to get involved in the main event if Imperium get involved. So for me, it kind of makes sense.
Good shout.
I was going to say this. We were talking about people potentially earlier to team up with Ilya Dragunov.
Yeah.
Cesaro.
Yeah. Good shout there.
It'd be brilliant. They've both got similar wrestling styles, and I think together as a team they put on fire. I don't see it happening because obviously it's just a case of pairing Cesaro up with somebody else again. Because that's what it feels like to me now with Cesaro. He never gets a singles push, and when you think he's going to go somewhere, they shove him with another tag team partner.
Yeah. So my next name was going to be Pete Dunne, but you've answered that one. Final name then, Eddie Dennis. So obviously Eddie Dennis is from South Wales. I spoke to Ashley Clement last week, and he said that Eddie appears to be fully fit or very nearly fully fit, but he's committed to NXT UK now. No longer a Progress guy, no longer an indie guy, committed 100% to NXT UK. If he's not fully fit, he's going to be very, very soon from his recent, I don't know if it was a bicep tear or a shoulder tear. But Eddie Dennis, being a South Wales guy, I'll be highly surprised if he didn't show up at some point tomorrow to make an appearance. Where do you think we'll see Eddie Dennis tomorrow? Do you think he'll just come on and do a promo?
Yeah. I can't see him, obviously, because there's no real place you can put him. The only thing I was thinking of logically is really the last time we saw Eddie Dennis was in his match at Blackpool properly anyway with Matt. So I don't know if he could potentially come down after, rekindle his feud with Mastiff. Don't want to see it at all. Just for Progress fandom, on my opinion, I'd love to see Morgan Webster get taken out and have Eddie Dennis replace Webster and then reform FSU from the Progress days. And again, fantasy booking, it never happened, but that's what I dream would happen. But yeah, for me, it'd just be promo work.
Yeah, I reckon he'll come out and cut a promo. I think he's got to show his face tomorrow. Well, Kieron, that brings us to the end of this episode. We've covered a lot. We've covered NXT UK, NXT, 2 fantastic episodes there. We've covered in detail our thoughts on the Takeover Cardiff card and our predictions for tomorrow night. And of course, me and you will be there. Before we say goodbye, where can the Wrestling with John's listeners catch up with you on social media? I know that you've launched a new Instagram page you want to tell us about. So tell us a little bit about that and where they can find you on Instagram.
So yeah, I've decided kind of to use the Wrestling with John's podcast and my love for wrestling as a combined sort of thing. So every week I'll be reposting and all of the Wrestling with John's stuff. But I've also set up, so me and my girlfriend go on these wrestling adventures. It's going to be nice to actually take some pictures, share them with the world. maybe get some comments. Maybe people can hit me up, send me some messages, ask me some questions. It's quite easy to find. Well, it's not actually. It's quite a long tag, to be fair. It's Wrestling Adventures MK. The MK isn't because of Milton Keynes. It's the initials of me and my partner. But yeah, you can hit me up on that. Twitter, I'm at Reed Kieron. And Facebook, you can't miss me because I pretty much post everything John posts.
There you go. So you're you an avid poster on Wrestling with Johners, and very, very kind of some really good contributions from Kieron. But Kieron, I want to thank you for coming on board with this podcast this week and helping us out. And we've thoroughly enjoyed your contributions. Talk about NXT and NXT UK. And I can't wait to meet up with you tomorrow. But thank you for helping us with this week's episode, buddy.
It's a pleasure as always. You know, I'm always have to be on, lighten your mood with my fantasy booking. Hopefully some of the fans like it as well, and hopefully one day WWE will listen and actually use it.
Get you in the booking team, mate. Get you in the booking team. But thank you, Kieron. Look forward to catching up with you tomorrow. But join me again and the Wrestling with Johners podcast on Sunday, where 2 episodes of the podcast will be dropping. The first of which will be AEW's All Out review episode, where Chris Thornton and Ash Crawford will be joining me to cover all the glorious action from AEW and their latest pay-per-view All Out. Coming to us tomorrow night, all the early hours of Sunday morning, if you're going to be watching it from the UK. And then I'll be joined by David Anderson, where we will be covering NXT UK Takeover Cardiff, a full review show there, also dropping Sunday afternoon. So please keep it tuned to the Wrestling with Johners podcast for all of your AEW, NXT, NXT UK updates. And if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please don't forget to spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family, and let's get even more people listening to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. So please subscribe and share and like and tell your friends. But in the meantime, from myself and from Kieron, thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you all soon. And take care. Have a great weekend.